Hi, I'm Ken Rutkowski, and I am very excited to spend time with you today. We're based right now in the United Arab Emirates, and throughout this entire event, we'll be interviewing incredible people. Natalie, you've been actually on this stage all day, and we get to learn all about you because you've been asking all the questions, but now you're the one that's in the center. You ready for this?
I'm ready, yeah. I'm used to the one asking the questions, so this will be a fun
weird, right?
turnaround, yes.
It's kind of weird. So first, what do you think about the UAE?
Oh, it's incredible. It's my first time. I didn't know what to expect, and it has really blown all of my expectations out of the water. It's beautiful. The people are so friendly. It's multicultural. I'm so happy to be here.
I mean, you're a seasoned journalist. You've been bouncing around the United States in different parts, interviewing people, really looking at what's going on. When you come to a place like this, if you would go off and interview people, what would be some of your first questions?
Oh gosh, well, think about it. When I was a journalist, I'm going to all the worst parts of town, right? The crime and the disasters. So, I would just ask what it's like to live in such a place that has so many different nations and cultures coming together and colliding, because I really see a lot of East meets West here. And it's exciting to see how they're interested in the technology and innovation of the blockchain and Bitcoin space. So I'd probably ask about that as well. Like, are you into Bitcoin?
Are you into Bitcoin? You're from the Midwest of the United States, originally.
I'm actually from Poland. I'm an immigrant.
Wait a second, you're from Poland?
Yes.
When did you move to the United States? How old were you?
I was 5. So my family immigrated in the early 90s to the area of Chicago because that's where all the Polish people go.
Rutkowski.
Exactly, yeah. And so, my family fled communism. My parents both grew up in a communist country, and they really just felt like they wanted freedom and a better education and a sense of opportunity for their kids. So we moved when I was really little.
Isn't it amazing? To them, Poland froze. Mm-hmm. So when they think of Poland, they think about the time they left, not the time it is today, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, they still keep in touch with a lot of people, and it's actually really interesting to sort of see the juxtaposition of how they remember Poland and the way that their friends describe it and how they've seen it when they've visited and gone back, because it's changed so much.
It is. It's an amazing country.
Yeah.
But Chicago is really notoriously known for great talk show hosts.
Oh, yeah?
Well, think about it.
Yourself included?
We have Oprah, we have Jerry Springer, all these people.
Yeah.
But really, no, Chicago's really known for it because broadcasting schools and all that. You grew up in a very pedigree town. Did you know you wanted to be in journalism?
Yeah, so growing up, we watched a lot of television and movies, and the television and news was really to help my parents augment their English skills. They didn't know English when they came, so I was pretty lucky since I was so little. I caught on very quickly. But being exposed to great hosts and anchors when you're young, it made me think, I think I want to do this someday. I loved Oprah, I loved Barbara Walters and Diane Sawyer. We watched appointment TV news when I was little while eating our Polish meal, and I just thought, what an incredible career. You get to interview people, policymakers, people from around the world. You get to learn. I'm a sponge. I want to learn all the time. And I thought that's what I want to do someday.
A Polish meal would be?
Oh, kotlet schabowy, which is basically like Wiener Schnitzel, if you know it.
Really?
That's my favorite meal.
Wait. So it wouldn't be like pierogies or anything like that?
I do like those as well, but no, my favorite is breaded pork, flattened, pounded breaded pork. I still pound to this day. I make it myself.
There you go. Put that on your Tinder profile, right? Yes. So you're sitting now back again as this before you became a journalist.
Yes.
Then you went to journalism school.
Mm-hmm.
Did you learn something different, or were you always inquisitive? Did school kind of open up the way you saw the world?
Well, I was always really curious, and I'm really grateful to my parents because I think coming from a communist background, they just really instilled me with both a sense of, you have to work hard. Working and education is the way that you're going to become successful and make a difference in your life. But the other thing was I also had a sense that anything was possible. My parents literally came here for the American dream, and they always said to me, whatever you want, you can achieve. So don't let anyone tell you can't do it. If you want to be Oprah, there's no reason you can't be Oprah. Right. So just work hard, get an education, and it can happen. So I had that personality where I was definitely a go-getter and, a really good student and just very brave. I went off to school in LA where I didn't know anybody. But journalism school was interesting too because the technology changes so quickly, right? So in undergrad, by the time I graduated and went to grad school, we're already moving from, analog and linear to non-linear to linear, and it was just fascinating to see the changes and how quickly they happened, especially with the rise of social media.
And you said you got to work in some of the worst beats ever, huh?
Yes.
Really bad.
Well, that's how you start, right? You're a cub reporter. You have to take any assignment, and it really builds you. It builds your character and your stamina because you're out there covering everything from the city council meetings to the terrible crime to the wind pummeling your face during a crazy storm and wildfires, public corruption. You get to cover some entertainment
What would be one of the
stories,
worst?
but
Come on, think about one of the worst ones you had to go on.
Oh, for sure. I'll tell you, because it was literally the reason why I decided to leave my traditional broadcasting national correspondent job was Hurricane Florence.
Oh, I love the hurricane reporters.
Yeah.
Is it that bad?
It was so bad. Okay, so imagine, for women too, I need to get ready to be on camera. I need makeup and I need hair and all that. And basically we were out of power, out of water for over a week, right? So you are in a tiny hotel room.
In Florida.
Nothing glamorous. This was in Wilmington, North Carolina.
Okay, got it.
And this Category 5 storm is coming toward us. All the power shuts down. We're having the wall of the storm approach us. And there's no electricity. You have to do your hair in the dark. You have basically one charger downstairs with the generator where it is. In your room, you're just sitting there in humidity because there's no air conditioning. And you're sleeping 2 hours a night. So it was the most exhausting, physically exerting, physically draining experience. And after that, I said, I don't know how these people do it. Maybe in my 20s, yes, that would be fun. I'd be like, yes, I want to be the first one on the scene. But you know what? I also appreciate being able to take some time, sit down and have a nice conversation like this in a beautiful setting as opposed to running around chasing storms and fires.
Did you get to stand in the hurricane?
We had the wall of the hurricane come through. I mean, I had never experienced something like it. We're in this courtyard hotel. David Muir was there with me. We survived, obviously.
It was ABC News.
It was ABC News. Yeah, we survived. I mean, it got downgraded to a Category 3. That was my first hurricane. But, these are the experiences that, shape you. And I would never want to go back. But I look back and I'm like, wow, I did that.
I think it's
cool.
cool.
I lived through it,
You just didn't live through it. You got to broadcast through that, right?
All day.
All day.
100 live shots in a day, yeah.
And then you said, I'm done.
I said I was done with that kind of lifestyle of the breaking news where you're traveling, you're sort of living out of a suitcase. Because when you do national corresponding, a lot of people think it's glamorous because it's TV, but it's actually, really, really physically trying because breaking news can happen at any time. You're sleeping in the middle of the night and all of a sudden you get a phone call. You're kind of on edge, always checking your phone. And then you have to be ready to fly at a moment's notice to where that story is. A lot of them happen in really remote places. Like I went to several mass shootings or the wildfires. They're literally in the most remote places. Sometimes you don't even get cell phone service. And then you're up and at it for, 16, 18-hour days sometimes, and it's just really difficult. So I decided to transition from that back to investigative reporting, which I had done prior to that.
Back to a big network?
Back to Los Angeles, where it was a local startup network that was called Spectrum News, and it was basically like New York One, if people are familiar with it. It's a big network out in New York, and I was their investigative correspondent and fill-in anchor.
What does that look like for somebody if they're an investigative reporter?
So you get more time, really, to work on a story. You pitch your own stories, and you basically get to really form sources and create meaningful content based on digging through documents, really investigating leads, and trying to hold people accountable who are in office, which has always been something that's really important to me. So it was a luxurious news job in the sense that I didn't have to turn something every day like I was used to in some of my other jobs. I got to take my time, really do my research, plan out who I was going to interview, and put together pieces, some of which got nominated for Emmys. So that was great.
Good job.
Yeah.
Isn't one of the hardest things is to not become part of that story by either your emotional side, because you start to get passionate about this, or somehow be part of the story where they're starting to film you. It happens now.
Yeah, for sure. For me, I think I've always been able to separate the two, and for me it was always just about holding people accountable. I felt, if anything, like the media, especially today, tends to favor the government and tends to go easy on them because they want access or they don't want to be too mean. I don't feel that way. I feel like if you're elected to public office, your duty is public service. It's not about making money, and we should hold your feet to the fire, especially when there are documents proving something about, the money trail. So I think that more journalists, especially on the television side, because I think, on the TV side, you kind of get sort of the stereotyped as, oh, you just want to be on TV, you do these
Right.
quick hits and you're done. It's the newspaper reporters that go sniffing around. And I always wanted to be a little bit more like that. I felt like if I pull the right documents and I know that you're up to something, I want to hold you to it and I want you to answer, not just say, oh, this person said no comment. So I was always a little bit of a bulldog, whether my newsrooms liked it or not.
One of the biggest challenges also today is that window, that news window, is so narrow. It used to be, hey, let's get something out on Monday. We have the whole week to write it. Now it's like every 3 to 5 hours, and that's it.
Oh, well, social media has changed and news changes by the second.
Yeah.
I mean, there's something new. It's funny. I actually joke that I went from one 24/7 industry, which is news, to another 24/7 industry, which is Bitcoin. I can never turn it off. But every second, it's different and something can break at any moment.
So you look at the crypto space.
Yeah.
Not just Bitcoin, right? Is it just crypto or just Bitcoin?
I'm a Bitcoin purist.
You're Maximus, huh?
Yeah.
That's it. There's nothing else.
Yeah, that's right.
So if there's a cool thing happening with Dogecoin, or anything, you just kind of, is that just noise to you?
Well, here's the thing. I'm a huge believer in free markets. I'm like a big believer in capitalism. So whatever you want to do, especially with your hard-earned money, go for it. I hope you're successful in your endeavors to invest. But me personally, I'm super passionate about Bitcoin because I think our system is really broken. Bitcoin is what helped me understand why and how our system is broken, and it potentially fixes it. So I'm truly one of those people that believes in the mantra of fix the money, fix the world. And so I want to focus on that because we don't have mass adoption yet. Most people don't even understand what Bitcoin is. So instead of, kind of splintering my focus into these other spaces, which are emerging and which I think other people should, and I wish them luck to focus on, I really just am passionate about Bitcoin and hoping to educate people about the space.
How did you explain Bitcoin to your parents?
It's so funny because my mom actually, when we immigrated here, she went through a couple of jobs. And the last one she had was actually in banking, in traditional banking. And she would always complain and talk about how back in like the 90s or at least the 80s, there were high interest rates. You could put your money in the bank in a normal savings account and get like 6%. And today they're actually, charging fees to the people that can't even afford to have money in their accounts. And so she always thought that the system was sort of flopped on its head. And I think that predisposed me to kind of being attracted to the sense of Bitcoin, but she was also a believer in physical money. She's like, it has to be physical, gold. She's more of like a gold bug. But when I sent her the Bitcoin standard translated into Polish, she finally understood why I'm so passionate about it. And she's like, okay. And now she asks me, she goes, what's the price of Bitcoin? And she gives me a little, pat on the shoulder and says, okay, I'm okay with this.
So in the broadcast space, you have Oprah as one of those bright stars, right? In the Bitcoin space, what do you got? Michael Saylor and Jordan Belfort? I mean, who are the bright stars in the Bitcoin space?
Well, they're all on my podcast. There are so many great thought leaders who I've learned from. Saifedean Ammous, who's going to be speaking here at the conference, who wrote the Bitcoin Standard. Honestly, I credit my new career to him because when I read that book, it peeled the veil off of my eyes. I truly saw all the stories I had been reporting on through a different lens of exactly why money is at the core of so many of these problems in our society. But then there are so many others as well. There's Preston Pysh, there's Jeff Booth, there's Anthony Pompliano, Michael Saylor. There's just Lynn Alden, oh my gosh, genius, the Kaisers. There's so many people who we can learn from who have been actually sounding the alarm on some of these problems within our monetary system for a long time and nobody's been paying attention. So I hope to be, among them, at least interviewing them to help the cause.
How do you know when someone's kind of pulling the wool over your eyes, trying to pretend they know a lot? What kind of questions do you ask them to get right to the raw side, knowing that they don't know the depth that they should?
Yeah, I mean, I think I can tell when people haven't done their homework when they're against Bitcoin. Because I think if you truly understand it, I've met a lot of skeptics of Bitcoin, but I have never met a person who truly understands and knows Bitcoin who's skeptical of it. I really haven't. And so I think that there's a difference. So people who, ask questions that sort of go at the core of some of the myths that are out there that, oh, this is based on fraud, this can be copied, this can be killed, then I know you don't know what you're talking about.
Right. This is all for criminal actions.
Yes.
That's all right. That's the problem, right? Because that's been portrayed in movies and in TV as the criminal currency, and that's not true at all.
Right. No,
Right.
absolutely. I mean, look, everything is used for fraudulent activity. Caches, the legacy banking system. I mean, the people in charge of it are guilty of it, right? There's fines that regulators charge the banks for committing fraud as well. So, we're never going to be in a system that's completely free of that. But I think Bitcoin is actually the most transparent because, again, every transaction going back to the very beginning of the blockchain is right there recorded.
Sure.
So I would argue that it's going to make things a little bit more transparent and allow us to hold people accountable a little bit easier.
So how did COVID work with you? Did you enjoy that opportunity with COVID to get access to everybody because now they were zooming in, or was that a hindrance to you?
That's really a great point because I didn't have coin stories before the pandemic. I had a different podcast called Career Stories where I focused on people within the media space and within politics and social media about how they achieved success and what their advice is. But behind the scenes, I had been studying Bitcoin and our economic system. And I had started investing in 2017, but really not taking it seriously. When the pandemic hit, I had a mentor who said, you have to read the Bitcoin Standard. Everything that you are talking about with your work and what you believe in fits perfectly into this thesis about where our world is headed and the history of money. So read the book. So I read it, and I ended up reading it 3 times. I was so shocked that I hadn't learned any of the information really in school, which shows how bad our financial literacy is. I mean, I have a master's of science from Northwestern, right? But I never really understood how money printing works. So I started to go really down the rabbit hole, and I decided to shift my podcast during the pandemic into coin stories and interview the people who I was studying within the space and hearing from and learning from. And it was easy because, you can do Zoom interviews. You don't have to travel and be in person necessarily. So I got access to all of these biggest minds. And, I was kind of coming in with luckily a media background. So I knew how to do my research and ask the right questions, I think. And also I was one of the only women. There are not a lot of women content creators or investors in this space. So I think it was a niche. It was kind of like what Oprah actually has said before is when preparation meets opportunity, that's luck. It's not really luck. You've been working toward it.
Absolutely. It's not luck at all. I kind of hate that, right? It's hard work. Okay, technically, what are you using? What's your equipment?
Oh, okay. Technically, I use just like a little Zoom recorder and a microphone and my Zoom app, a different kind of Zoom, a Zoom app on my computer and my little iMac, and that's it.
What are you using? Are you using Final Cut to do editing?
Oh, Adobe Premiere and Adobe Audition.
Got it.
Yes.
And did you find a good podcasting platform that you like? Which one do you like?
I have Libsyn that I host my feed, and then I put everything on the different platforms.
Good analytics.
YouTube.
Gives you an idea where things are?
Yeah, I mean, I was blown away by the growth because, again, I had a podcast before that was more of a hobby that I always did as I was a network correspondent, just for fun. And this one achieved the same amount of listeners that the other one did in 3 years in like a couple months. I mean, my follower count exploded, and I was like, wow, there's really an audience for this, and I can be myself finally.
Isn't that crazy? You're working on something that takes you forever to get an audience, and all of a sudden it was the topic that changed, and everybody's rushing into it.
Yeah, and I think it's your passion, too, that shows through. I felt like, I don't know if you ever felt this way since you kind of have experience in the exact same industry, but I felt like being a reporter, especially seeing where our country was going and becoming more and more divided, I felt like by being neutral or reporting in a certain way, I was almost being an accomplice to some of the things that I saw going wrong, and I felt like I couldn't be my authentic self. I wanted to say something, and I felt things that were about what was happening in America, but I couldn't share those, and I wanted to try to start sharing my opinions more, and Coin Stories gave me an avenue to do that because, again, I think our system's broken and it's rigged and people know it, but now there's a fix and most people don't know the fix.
Yeah, but most of that audience is generally towards a libertarian type. It really is. That's what at least it looks like it is. So you're speaking to an audience that gets it.
Well, so I disagree with that in the sense that, yes, a lot of Austrian economists and early Bitcoiners do believe in libertarianism, or some of them are more conservative. However, I truly believe that Bitcoin is completely bipartisan or apolitical.
But people that listen, I've looked at the stats. It's very...
For sure. Yeah, and I hope to change that. I'm doing panels online and Twitter Spaces about why Bitcoin is bipartisan. I've even tried to reach out to some politicians myself and offer to go in there and teach them about Bitcoin because I do educational seminars and workshops. I would like to teach them about why it would help the very people they're representing who need it the most. Yeah. Banking the unbanked, allowing access for people who truly have been disadvantaged by the system. And as this wealth gap continues to grow, grow. I want to help fix that. And the one thing we need to do is stop the inflation, and Bitcoin helps that.
Crazy question. Favorite animal?
Favorite animal?
Yeah.
A lion.
What are 3 adjectives that describe a lion?
A lion, courageous, powerful, and a leader.
And that's what you are. You are those 3 words. It's been a pleasure hanging out with you. People want to find out more about where you're at. Where do they go?
Yeah, so I'm very active on Twitter, Bitcoin Twitter, at Nat Brunell. And then my podcast, Coin Stories, can be found on YouTube, Google Play, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts.
Thanks a lot for hanging out.
Thank you so much for having me.